Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having an amazing day today. Today we're taking a look at the book The Crystal Shard by R.A. Salvatore, which was published in the 80s. It was the second book in the Forgotten Realms series that was published by TSR. It was very, very big in the selling. It was his first novel. I've read this book. I read the book as it was published when I was growing up down in southern West Virginia from my local Walden Books. I was devouring fantasy after I read the J.R.R. Tolkien stuff in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And then I stayed in that genre and was devouring things from Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Song, Dragon Singer, and Dragon Drums trilogy, and then the Dragon Riders of Pern. Later on to Fred Saberhagen's The Complete Book of Swords that was being published, a lot of things that I bought or was given, and that sort of a thing. So I had already read the Dragonlance stuff by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, and then this stuff on the bookshelves, and then I moved to this stuff as it was published in the next world over, in the Forgotten Realms, and much like those. These are best-selling works that started to get published, and R.A. Salvatore has like 22 best-selling novels, right? So this put him on the map in a major way. And one of the interesting things TSR was doing at this time was that a lot of these authors that were launching these worlds that are based on their own Dungeons and Dragons worlds, like Dragonlance, are new authors, right? Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman have never written a novel before, right? Similarly, R.A. Salvatore had never written a novel before. He's a big hit for the Forgotten Realm stuff. So this is something that's pretty interesting, if you will, and taking a look at that. But the first person who wrote for the Greyhawk actually was Andre Norton, which I've gone back and reread for you and reviewed for you previously when I was doing a deeper dive into Andre Norton's stuff, because I never read it growing up. And she was a big name in science fiction and fantasy. She's considered a great name in science fiction and fantasy. She's in the Hall of Fame. She's a big name in that genre, right? So anyway, so I took these 6 books, the first 6 books that he published in the series, the Icewind Dale trilogy and the Dark Elf trilogy, with me on my trip to Israel, where I was going for 10 days. 2 days flying down there, 7 days there actually, and then 1 day flying back. And then I got back on Tuesday, and this is now Saturday, and I'm still waiting on my luggage that has my books in it that I already finished. So I don't have the Crystal Shard to show you my initial copy of it that I've gone back and reread a few times here and there. This is not the first time I've read the Crystal Shard trilogy. While going from one place to another, I also was doing it when I was living in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and I was interviewing for a job outside of Milwaukee in one of its suburbs, and I didn't have a car to drive to the place, and they said that you had to pay initially and they reimburse you, and I just didn't have the money because I was between jobs to fly, so I just took a Greyhound bus instead, and then I read on a Greyhound bus taking me from Ypsilanti, Michigan to Milwaukee. Anyway, and then they picked me up at the Greyhound bus station. So that was pretty cool. And I got a chance to read this trilogy again, and I reread it again a few years ago. So I do this every probably 5 or 6 years. I'll go back and reread some of the books in the original series. It's easy to read. It takes me about an hour for me to read 50 pages, and these are roughly 300 pages each. So it's about a 6-hour read for me to go back and reread them, which doesn't take that much time. My hope was that I was going to read this in 1 day on the planes flying over to Israel. I only knocked out like 100 before I got too sleepy. So then the second day, my goal was to finish. My initial goal was to knock out the second book on day 2, but I was just way too sleepy, so I only knocked out 100 pages in between stuff. And then I read the other 100 pages on day 3 at the hotel, on my first night of the hotel. So I knocked it out in 3 days rather than my 1 day I was hoping. And took the entire trilogy with me. And then I did the same, and then the second book, I also did it in 3 days. I did 100 pages, and then I was still in the mood, so I knocked out 100 pages from the third book. So this stuff is really fast. It's you can read it pretty quickly and blow through it pretty quickly. But then you go, so I knocked this out in 3 days in Israel, 2 days on my traveling days, and my third day on my first night in Israel, staying in a local hotel. I flew into Tel Aviv. So that was pretty cool. This is my first time in Israel, so I enjoyed knocking that stuff out. And so my goal is to knock out all these books for you, and so forth. Again, this is the first book by R.A. Salvatore. R.A. Salvatore is considered by many fans to be one of the better writers when it comes to writing fight scenes, because he was a bouncer for a bar, so he's somebody who actually was regularly fighting. So he knows what that's like. So it's considered to be one of his better gifts as a writer. Going back and rereading the Crystal Shard, it's very uneven. It has a lot of issues. drizz't changes from the first couple of books from a side character to the main character. His personality changes too, and it's just in the first novel he's portrayed as this happy-go-lucky character who's constantly throwing himself into battle, and Wolfgar says, "This guy's going to kill me, but I'll follow him willingly." So he's and yet later on in the Dark Elf trilogy, he's much more brooding and thinking and that sort of a thing. In the prequel trilogy, in the Dark Elf trilogy, so he changes his characterization from where he is and here to the prequel trilogy, and that will continue in the sequels that are written to both of those trilogies. So he definitely changes in his personality from how he was initially planned. Again, he's also just he is an ascended extra. He was just a side character, right? He was just a tutor, just a side character, one member of a giant party. But he was such a big popular hit. And how many characters in Dungeons & Dragons campaigns were also misunderstood Drow? Right. And so what he does is, with his creation of drizz't, is that he combines very cleverly, I think, two major characters that already existed in fantasy. So let's take a look at those two and how drizz't really sort of elevates, just combines two existing archetypes. The first archetype is the Aragorn archetype, the Ranger archetype from The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Ranger archetype is a key. The Wilderness Ranger, the guy who protects people, goes from town to town, explores the wilderness, can track, that sort of a thing. The Rangers of Middle Earth are a key figure, if you will, and Aragorn is the biggest and best known of these figures, and so drizz't is a good, wilderness savvy, tracking abilities, it's all on tops, very strong fighter, that fits the first level of Aragorn. But he's also the anti-hero from Michael Moorcock of Elric, the guy who is ruling the character. People are a non-human race that are very, very, very evil. And he's born with a pang of conscience. And now he's not good. He's a hero. He's the protagonist, but he's more of an anti-hero. Nobody would call him good. He's willing to do evil acts to accomplish good things. So nobody would call him, a true lawful good protagonist, right? But he does have a conscience. He's loyal to his friends. He does things for the good, for the betterment of his people. So he does have those sorts of things. And so drizz't is the ranger and the good and the wilderness savviness of Aragorn mixed with on the good guy, on the sole good guy from an evil, nasty race of Elric. And he combines two very, very popular characters into one. So he has a hit, right? It's very simple. You can see how that would happen, right? And how that side character would end up becoming the dominant character of this series. So there you are. So that's sort of my take on it. In the Crystal Shard, again, I keep my reviews spoiler free, but my simple take on the Crystal Shard is that basically what winds up happening very early on, you'll find out if you've never read it, that this artifact has arisen And in this world, these evil people, these evil liches, had set about to create this nasty, powerful artifact. And the lich is an undead master wizard. And so they set out. They combine their powers, and it's been banished to the Forgotten Realms in the north, in Icewind Dale, and now it's just waiting for people to find it. That's the name of the crystal shard comes from for this novel from this artifact. It's now local. And then Ulfgar is the main character, the barbarian from the north. The barbarians are about to launch a war on the 10 towns up in the Icewind Dale in the far north of this world. It's basically like, it's not even like Canada, because it's way too far for Canada and doesn't have agriculture. Like Canada's got a very nice, wealthy agriculture. The Great Plains extends from USA to Canada and so forth. So rather than being like Canada with agriculture in its southern parts, it's really more just like the north. An uncomfortable, unhospitable, like Siberia, if you will. Northern Siberia or something like that. Or northern Canada up in the extreme Arctic cold, where there's just not a lot of things to do and to eat and to things, and stuff. So those barbarians are about to invade the 10 towns that exist there. And so that's the first part of the novel. And then this novel is divided into 3 parts, if you will. And each of those will be about different things that are happening and different characters that are happening too. But there you are. The other major characters are Regis the Halfling, Brunner Battlehammer, the dwarf leader of the Mithril Hall, people that have fled for hundreds of years ago to this place in a local mountain. And then his adopted daughter, Catti, a human who has been orphaned, and he brought in and raised as his son. So those are our other major characters that will become a key part of what's happening, if you will, in that novel, and then the rest of this trilogy. So there you go. I'll go ahead and leave you to it, because probably most people have already read The Crystal Shard. So again, I'm going back and rereading a lot of these things as a part of this channel. This channel's name, The Worst Thing About New Books, is a call out to a quote by a famous French philosopher named Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about new books is that they kept us from reading the old ones. And so going back and reading novels that were published in the 80s, decades ago, is a key part of what this channel tries to do, and tries to unlock a lot of these older things for you. So there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. That's The Crystal Shard. What did you think about it? I would probably give it, because it's a little uneven at times, it's the first novel, probably just a 6 out of 10, but it's fun. It's never boring. It's very fast. It's a 6-hour read. Doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take itself so seriously, which I enjoy. So I'm probably just giving it a 6 out of 10. The later stuff will get better. But again, but going back and rereading it, it's a little uneven in places, and in some places it's slow, in some places it's way too fast. And it's so, anyway, but I'll go ahead and leave it to it. Did you agree with my 6 out of 10? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you want to talk about spoilers or the ending, let's talk about it. If you enjoyed this, why not hit that subscribe button? There's going to be a lot more of these to follow. And then finally, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.